Hey guys, welcome to Chatty Cathy and crew. Today's show, we're gonna do a show about foster care versus adoption, or fostering versus adoption. Again, I have my lovely friend Lo back on here to share her experience with it, and I think it's an interesting topic, and I think a lot of people need to be more aware about it. I know people know about it, but just understanding it a little deeper to get a better understanding or some type of clarification on it. All right, Lo, what you got for us?
So, I became a foster parent, I want to say 2017, I think.
Okay.
Somewhere around there. And I did it because I've always wanted to foster. Actually, I wanted to adopt. Let me back up. So I wanted to adopt after I had my own kids, because I've always had a special place in my heart for adoptive kids, because one of my aunts, she couldn't have children when she was, I guess, in her 20s or 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And I say couldn't have because I'll let you know a little bit later. But she was told she couldn't have children, so she was one of the ones who was just she always had people's kids. And she adopted, she actually fostered, I would say maybe 7 kids, and then she ended up adopting a little girl eventually, who is now 21 years old.
Nice.
So that's just always been something that I wanted to do, and I admired her for doing that. So I had said that I would maybe adopt around 35 if I wasn't married and didn't have kids,
Right.
and I stayed true to that. So, but I found out that it was easier, because I'm not going to lie, adoption is expensive when you do it privately. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, you know what, let me foster. And through that process, my end goal was to come out with a forever child. So nice. I started out in 2017, like I said. I had recently purchased a home. And again, my plan was to foster or adopt after I got married and had kids. Not something I thought of doing on my own. But I had a home, and then I realized, why wait? I had plenty of space, and so I signed up, and that's kind of how my journey began. The process took about 3 to 4 months to finally get approved, because there's a lot of stuff you have to go through. You have to go through training, all the certifications, inspections, the whole 9.
Okay.
But once you get in, it's like immediate. So once I got approved, I immediately got a call that same day to take a 2-day-old little boy. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, a baby, that's going to be perfect. But the situation is, and being a foster parent, they give you kind of like a summary of the situation with the kid or kids. And so you got a choice to say whether or not you want the kid or you don't, or you want the group of kids. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'll take this baby. Like, of course, it's 2 days old. So I left work, went to Walmart, got, Pampers, the diaper, everything you needed. So another thing, you have to be financially able to do immediately what is needed for the kids. Because yes, they do pay you, but it takes 45 to 60 days before you actually start getting assistance. So you can't adopt or try to foster and not be able to take care of the child's immediate needs. So I left work, when I got milk, the whole 9. Well, it took 3 to 4 days for the baby to come. It's supposed to be that day. And so I'm getting antsy, nervous. Well, the situation with the baby was his mom had tested positive for drugs. And the delay was, she was married. They were both white, mother and father. The mother and her husband were white, but the father was black. And so in order for them to give the baby to the father's mother, which was the baby's grandmother, they had to do a DNA test.
The biological father?
Right. Or the biological father.
Okay.
Because if you're married, your husband is your presumed child's father. And of course, the baby was mixed. It was clearly black. But legally, they couldn't trust that the woman who was trying to claim the baby was the grandmother until they did a DNA test. Okay. So I was just going to have the baby until the results came back, because there was a family member that actually wanted him, which was the grandmother. Okay. So I decided not to take him because of the attachment that I knew I would immediately form, and then I'd have to just give him right away, give him back. And so that was one other thing I struggled with. I knew that fostering would not necessarily end in a permanent situation, but if I knew it was going to be so small, that's not something I wanted to get involved in, because you have to find childcare, you have to do all these things, and then in a couple of weeks it all stops. So, however, it was something that I just followed my gut feeling on, and I said no after weighing everything out.
And spending all this money.
Spending all the money, but we'll find out why I spent that money later.
Okay.
So then that same day, I got another call, because as soon as you say no, it's literally calls are coming. I mean, it's just like that. So to kind of give you an idea, in Maryland, about 36 to 40 kids a week enter the foster care system.
What?
Yes. So unfortunately, there's not enough foster parents, or what we're called providers, to take on the influx of children. So if, let's say, I'm not able to take on the children that are, that they're asking me about, and no one else is, these kids go to, and just to try to be transparent, like a holding cell, where they just have these kids sitting until there's someone able to take them. The younger you are, the easier it is to get the kids placed, but the older you are, the harder it is. And then a lot of these kids, this is like a cycle for them. So you have kids that have burned bridges that come back, and no one will take them. Something I did not know, and I know now, teenagers that have babies, they're foster children. So if a 15-year-old girl that's in the system has a baby, then you can take her and her child in as foster care. So it's just a constant thing, and it's very sad, because you're saying, like, for instance, you have a preference of a gender, but you cannot have a preference of a race. You can't say, I only would take white kids, or I only would take black kids. You can't say that. But you can say, I will only take a 6-year-old boy or a 7-year-old girl, based on what you need. So I had initially agreed to only taking school-age little boys from the ages of 5 to 7. Well, I got a call about 2 little boys, and they said one was, the oldest boy was, at the time, 5. And his little sister, was 1. And I'm like, oh, 1. Like, oh. And I only had room for 1. I only had a room for this one little kid. So my heart said yes. And my mouth was like, but it ended up flipping. My mind was saying no, but my mouth said yes. So I ended up saying yes. And at the end of the day, I had 2 kids. The funny thing is, when I got there and came out the car, I'm like, well, they said this was a girl. She don't have no hair. Come find out it was a little boy. So it was 2 little boys, a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old. And they were turning 2 and 6 the same month. So they came to me August the 3rd. I'll never forget, August the 3rd of 2017. And they had a birthday. One was on August 16th, and the other was on August 22nd. So in the first month of me having the kids, I had 2 birthday parties, or 1 birthday party. They got sick, started school, the whole 9. Wow. So that all happened in 1 month span. So I ended up fostering them for 15 months. So it ended up giving us 2 birthdays together.
15 months. You sound like them kids.
15 months. Yeah,
how long was that? A year?
A year and a half.
You sound like how old is your child? 15 months. No, he won.
You're right. So a year and a half. But actually it was supposed to be for 45 days.
Okay.
So they said the mom would be getting them back within 45 days. And I said, okay, well, that's better than knowing it'd be a couple of days. And it ended up being a year and a half. So had them for a year and a half. Went through a lot of ups and downs. I was supposed to... Actually, they were supposed to be reunified with their mom on several occasions, and whenever we get close to that time, something would happen, and it would start all over. So it was a lot of ups and downs, very emotional for them as well as myself, because don't ever think the fostering only impacts the children and impacts the provider as well, because again, the attachment, you become these children's family or parent, your life changes, and it's 100% centered around them. And then depending on all the dynamics of the situation, you have the biological parents if they're involved, you have caseworkers, you have courts, you have therapists, you have lawyers, you have all these people, and on an average, and I'm not exaggerating, 3 to 4 people a week would come to my home.
For the whole year half?
The whole year and a half, and it's nothing I could say because the children have a social worker, then they have an attorney, and most of the children are going to have a therapist. So that's at least 3 people on a regular basis. You have no say. I can't say I don't want to. It's just a matter of scheduling.
That's what I say. You have to accommodate all
You
that?
have to accommodate all of that.
Wow.
So it gets very tough. And then in my situation, based on my work schedule, it was easier whenever the kids had visits with their mom for it to be on weekends. And it's not a requirement, but they encourage, if you can, to help facilitate that. So I'm taking the kids and dropping them off to their moms. And, if she's not there, then I'm waiting. So it's a lot that comes with this whole process. But nevertheless, it was beneficial for me, and I enjoyed it. They left me, like I said, for 15 months. I had them, and then just as quickly as they come, that's how quickly they go. And it's very traumatic because, I remember the day they came, they were starving. They had on 2 little clothes, and they said they were hungry, and I gave them both a banana. And then as soon as they got through this, they could have another one. They ate 3 bananas in a matter of maybe 20 minutes each. They were starving. And so then when they left, it was, healthy kids, used to this life, pick them up from school and daycare, and then they disappear. And so they kind of knew, because the same person who brought them, which was a social worker, was the same person that came to pick them up. So those are, the downs or the negatives associated with it, because that they're going back to circumstances that are pretty much the same as to what got them there in the first place. And then there's a chance that they can go back into the system, which in my case is what happened. And they're now with another foster family. So I've seen how the system fails our children. But I've also seen that there are good people in the system trying to work for them. That just was not the case for my 2 little boys. So it is a need for good foster parents, because there are a lot of foster parents that just do it for the money.
Yes.
And so the kids don't get any better of a situation from where they came from. And it's just a lot. Like I said, even just knowing that when I had those 2, there's other kids that I couldn't help.
Right.
There's some days I wish I had a house and was able to take 7 or 8 kids. Because that's just how many kids you see. We would go to fostering activities, like they would take them to the zoo, or they pay for Christmas parties, and you see these kids walking around looking like foster kids. And so to me, looking like a foster kid is when they look completely separate or different from you, or their clothes are too little, and just
even when
feeling,
in the care of somebody else.
in the care, like these are events of foster parents that were able to bring the kids and just have activities, and they were walking around and their hair wasn't combed and all these things. And again, that matters to me, because again, these children were really not better off from where they were. They were just with someone that the state said, you can keep these kids for me. And they don't really monitor the upkeep. You have social workers that just do a checklist. They come to your house, they see whatever they can do, just to justify the kids still being with you, and then they just kind of walk away. So there's a need for good foster parents, not just people that are willing to get a check every month. So if it is something that you guys want to do, I definitely encourage you. There are a lot of kids. It is a selfless act. It will take a lot from you, but it's definitely worth it. There are a lot of kids out here that just need someone. There are a lot of people that struggle without having kids, and there's kids already here that just need you. So
right. So
yeah.
Let me ask you this. You said something. You said they went back into foster care. Why didn't you get them?
So I was not notified when they went back into foster care.
Okay.
It was my own personal connection and just me trying to keep up with them as much as I could, that I found out on my own.
Okay.
And this is where I say the system failed. They had been with me for 1.5 years, and I believe that I should have been the first person, because I still was a licensed provider, and they have a file. And so whoever picked up their case when they were re-entered the system, they should have checked their file and checked with me before they considered taking them to completely different or total strangers.
Right.
And they did not do that.
Okay.
So by the time I found out, they were already in a home, or what they call placed. And so the social worker at that time, she has a workload, and it was just easier for her to say, well, they can stay where they are.
Right.
She didn't know that I was their previous foster mom. Just those things. It was just sad that I had to help her learn a case that she should have studied before she made a decision about their best interest. So those are the things that I feel show just how much the system fails these kids. And then the social worker that I have currently, because I do have another child. She said she would have done it completely like I said. She would have never placed a kid that had already been in foster care with someone without asking if the previous provider would be interested in taking those kids.
Cool.
Because again, it just makes sense. It's like a family member. So they're currently still in foster care with strangers.
Okay.
Strangers to me. But they've been there almost a year now, again, with someone else. So it is a cycle that they go through, unfortunately. And the state is just really just trying to finish a quota, a checklist, and if the parents do what they're supposed to, they don't see what's best for the kid, they go by what's best for the parent.
Right.
And it's always the kids that suffer at the end. So,
yeah. So, on to adoption.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, you said that you've always wanted to adopt, right? So, your route was fostering.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're at that point.
Yeah. So, a week before the boys that I had before were going to go back to their birth mother, I got a call from my aunt, the aunt that I mentioned earlier, who had said she couldn't have children, who, by the way, she had a child when she was 40 after she finally adopted her daughter that's 21, yes.
Wow.
So for her entire adult life, she was told she couldn't have children. And so that's what she accepted, and she just went on, and she adopted this little girl, and then she got married when she was about 39, and she had her only biological child at the age of 40.
Sweet.
So a lot of people don't get what they want until they do what they're supposed to do. And I believe she was destined to be Sierra's mother. And so until she got Sierra, because she may not have gotten Sierra had she gotten her child that she wanted.
We say no names.
I'm sorry.
That's cool. Go ahead.
Sorry. You probably no one ever know, but I apologize.
Yeah.
But yeah, so had she never had that opportunity, or that has she never been told no to something that she really wanted, I don't think she would have kept pushing to get to where she was. So that was a very encouraging situation for me. However, she is the one who called me a week before the boys were going back to their mom, and she said, "Hey, do you want a son?" And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "This is crazy." I'm like, "What do you mean you don't want a son?" She was like, "So there's a lady, and mind you, she's in Kansas City, Missouri, where I'm from." She said, "There's a lady here at the school I work at, and there's a little boy who she is his foster mom. She's been his foster mom for 3 years, but he is eligible for adoption, meaning kids are eligible for adoption when their biological parents' rights have been terminated.
Okay.
So at this point, his parents will not get him back, and so he will remain in foster care until someone adopts him."
Or to 21, right?
Or to 18, depending on the situation. So his current foster mom did not want to adopt him. So she was on this journey of trying to find a home for him. And he had been through the process of adoption a couple of times, and things didn't go as planned. And so she said, "He's really cute, he's just smart as ever." She said, "But he is something else." And I said, "Oh," she said, "but I really, 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 really think that you can get him together."
Right.
And so I was like, wow. So that's another one of those moments where I feel like, had I not been in the right place at the right time, and I looked at this situation as such a negative, like I'm losing my boys, oh my gosh.
Right.
And then, to get a call out of nowhere, I was in a meeting at work asking me if I wanted a son.
Right.
A lot of the situations with this little boy was identical to the 2 boys that I had. So I started to realize that God was preparing me for him, and he prepared me through them. So I said yeah, and that process was not quick. Like, again, I'm like, oh, this is great. He needs a foster home, so that means I'm going to be able to say yep, and I'm just going to get him. It didn't work that way.
Right.
So he had done like a commercial in the state of Missouri where they do these adoption commercials. You've all seen them, where they have, child plastered, and they'll say, "If you're interested, call this number." So because
they do them here.
They don't. Well, they do these little sponsored ads, and so weekly they'll have a little snippet of kids that are eligible for adoption, and they had done this commercial for him. So because they had done that, they had to go through this process, and so at least 10 or 15 people had inquired about him. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So now you got all these extra people on, in the pool of options, and had she communicated to me maybe a couple of weeks before, then they wouldn't have had to do the video, you know, the whole little situation. So I got discouraged. I'm like, oh, now I got all these people I'm competing against, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So long story short, it ended up being, I think it was October of 2019 that I found out about him. It wasn't until March of 2020 that I actually got approved to be his foster parent.
Nice.
So whenever even though you know it's going to end up being an adoption situation, or potentially, because you do have an opportunity to say, no, I can't do this depending on the situation,
right,
you have to foster a child for 6 months before you can adopt. So in March, it was still approved to be a foster parent, and then I had to go through the process of fostering him before we get the approval to actually adopt, which we just received last week, and we'll be going through adoption on the 29th of January. So
sweet.
I'm at a place where now my whole purpose or plan of being a foster parent has come to fruition, and I will have my forever child. But it's also bittersweet because there are 2 children that I wish that I could have kept as well. But again, I try to look at it on the bright side, that for whatever reason I did not get a chance to keep them, I wouldn't have the child that I have now that I absolutely know needs me, right, if they were still with me. So just trying to look at the bigger picture, that everything is not always going to be how you want it, but as long as you're positioned to be where you need to be, that's the most important thing. So I highly recommend anyone interested in fostering or adopting, reaching out to your local state or county and looking into how you do that, because it is definitely rewarding. It is not easy, but it's definitely worth it. And there are so many kids in need of someone to think about them and not themselves, and just be willing to sacrifice some time, some years. I mean, there's teenagers, there's kids with disabilities, and one thing I will say, the state of Maryland, I don't know about any other state, they take care of those kids. It will not be a hardship, because the best way to look at it is they're paying you to take, it's unfortunate, but a burden off of their hands, because these kids have nowhere to go. And so if you're willing to do it and you're able, I highly encourage you all to just think outside of the box. And again, it might not be something you ever thought of, but if you have an extra room, and you can just be a foster parent, you don't have to foster to adopt, but just understand there's just so many kids that need somebody. And if you can, I beg of you for them to consider it.
Sweet. Nice.
Yep.
Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Again, man, it's kids out there that need your help. Again, these kids didn't ask to be here. They're put in circumstances beyond their wildest imaginations. If you can help, I'm saying if, and like people say, if was the fifth, we all be drunk, but whatever. If you have the opportunity to help, please help. Again, opportunities are given, chances are taken. Please help these children so that we can put them in a better situation, so that when we get older, they are the ones we have to fall back on. If we don't help them now, they can't help us later. Thanks for coming. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Fostering versus adoption. Do what you can, when you can, while you can. Chatty Cathy and crew, like and subscribe. Comment down below and let me know what you guys think. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the show. The show was brought to you in support of Euphoria Aesthetics. Euphoria Aesthetics has all your natural skincare products that not only helps the skin, but also helps the intimate area. They offer all natural skin products such as body butters, soaps, cleansers, wash, yoni steams, yoni oils. For all your natural skincare products, check out Euphoria Aesthetics. I'll leave the description in the link below.